Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Hello.
Clear up one thing for me. If you're here, who's home disappointing your parents?
Welcome, ghosts from the future, Nazi double agents, and dead queens. How topical. To episode 461 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 20th of September, 2022, and featuring Lost in Time, written by Rupert Light, something, and starring Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith, Daniel Anthony as Clyde Langer, and Anjali Mohindra as Rani Chandra. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and apparently that name took me off guard. With me are color commentator Alex Fireheart.
Just realized the stream name is still Creative Car. Oh well.
And technical director Mad Matt Winchell.
Just for your information, Mr. Triumph the Insult Dog, if I'm not home disappointing my parents are disappointing each other. Thank you.
Co-host Randy Ronson McCulloch is still on his extended medical leave.
He is.
Oh, and I changed
improving.
I changed everything except the name Creative the Crowman, but I did update the date and the Sarah Jane Adventures part.
I've done those before. I've done those before. You'll catch it later, hopefully.
Oh yeah, I'll have to fix it when I export it to YouTube.
I was gonna say something. No, I forgot what it was.
You were about to give an update on Rand, and I interrupted you.
Randy. He is good enough that he's also joined on the ghost hunting game, but he did also say that he's also very happy they're monitoring his heart, because he's pretty sure that thing skyrocketed at a couple points.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Well, I imagine that's because I'm guessing it's a horror game.
Our Wednesday night games are usually ghost hunting games, so yes.
Right. I'm saying ghost hunt. Yeah, I was saying ghost hunting probably means horror, unless it's a Casper the movie game, which I doubt in 2022.
Not unless Casper's had a movie, and not that I'm aware of recently. Recently.
Like I said, unlikely.
Yeah, usually of late it's been Phasmophobia just because it's the least buggy, although I question that of late. There's a couple of different kinds of evidence that we literally have to sit there and go, could it just be that it's bugging out right now and we can't get it on this level? Maybe. But yeah. He's at least well enough that he's been able to sit in on that for at least an hour or so. But
okay.
Yeah, he was doing that last time he was ill and was not making podcasts too. Is that he gradually warmed up to that, and then he was ready to do podcasts again.
So does he have a private room, or is he roomed with people who don't care about the noise of a video game?
Oh, for the hospital stay, he's got his own room.
Oh, okay.
Most hospitals usually only have one person to room, depending.
Really?
At least the one I've experienced, yeah.
I know for a while my mother had her own room, but I think that was because there was some specific reason they needed like extra tests or like something that it didn't make sense to have her share a room with other people. But most hospital rooms I've ever been in, there's 2 to 4 people with just curtains in between.
My stints at Wisconsin hospitals has been that everyone gets a room.
Interesting. Okay.
So I'm not sure. There might be some somewhere, but
So maybe they're especially nice hospitals compared to Connecticut ones. I don't know.
maybe I don't know. But yeah, my experience in Wisconsin hospitals, which has thus far been mostly in West Bend, have been that everyone gets a room, and it sounds the same in Madison so far. But then again, Madison in particular has a number of more hospitals than other places, so I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's a pandemic going on, which currently isn't a heavy one right now, so cross fingers, knock on wood, that shouldn't happen anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So how's everybody's week going?
This.
Not too,
Go ahead.
yeah, not too bad. I might finally be permanently off 9:30 starts for a 4-hour shift, so that's nice. Because like it just seems so bizarre to start that early if I'm only gonna be there for 4 hours. If it was like a specific thing that I had to be there that early, it would probably make sense, but it's just weird. And also, my like last podcast, I said that I'd managed to order a PS5. It showed up on Monday, I
Dang.
think. Yeah, Monday. Which, it wasn't expected to get here, but at least the estimated like the day for Dave to actually go in and grab it was supposed to be like the end of the month. So like getting the call after getting home from work, like they tried calling me while I was in the shower, and then I checked because I'm like, it's probably a number I don't know. Then I checked and listened to the message, and it was like someone from EB Games being like, "Hey, can you ring me back?" So I did, and it's like, "Oh, your PS5 is ready to pick up," and I'm like,
Uh,
"Oh, okay."
nice.
Um, I
I
will.
guess it makes sense not to try to deliver that because that's something that would be very easily,
Very easily nabbed.
very easily stolen if
Mm,
anybody's interested notices it.
Big
yeah, I
box. It
also.
looks like it's heavy. It says fragile on it. Let's nick it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's also just how an easier way to control the flow of them because they're just sending them out to the specific stores rather than everywhere.
Mm,
And probably keep the cost down a bit as well because I had to go in and get it, I didn't have to pay a delivery fee.
right.
Um, but yeah, I will say I'm glad that I was told that the 8 terabyte drive I had plugged into my PS4, I could just plug that into my PS5 and play the PS4 games that way. Because thank God. Like, apparently you can technically move PS5 games across to an external drive, but you can't play them if they're on it. So it's more like if you want to archive something, I guess,
Hmm.
you would put it on the external drive and then move it back across when you
Gotcha.
care enough to play it again. Um, I will say that the hard drive space is pitiful. Because I feel like we should be at least 1 terabyte to start with now, but it's like I was told 850 gigs, but it didn't feel like it. Like I only moved 3 games across from my PS4 to that, and it took up like a good chunk of the space, and I'm like,
Which games
this
were
is
these?
pitiful. Um,
Be my first question.
Bloody hell, I forget.
If they're like AAA titles, I am not
Yeah,
surprised. Yeah.
yeah. It was
If if
like it
if
was
they were
like
indies, I would be surprised if you felt
mm,
like it was almost all gone.
yeah, like it was
Because indies
God
take
of
up a lot less
War.
space.
Yeah, it was like God
Okay.
of War 2018.
Oh, that's gonna be a big one,
The
yeah.
the remasters of the Kingdom Hearts stuff where it's packaged
Oh,
together up to a point.
yikes, that's gonna be a lot of space
So
too, yeah.
and Oh, I forget what the other one was now that I think about it. But oh well. In any case, like yeah, it was like the
Yeah,
game
that
sizes
Kingdom
aren't any
Hearts
small.
collection in particular.
Yeah. I mean, thank God it wasn't just the all-in-one thing where it had like 1.5 and 2.5, 2.8, and then 3, because
Jesus.
that would have been large. Um, but yeah, it's just like some of these I'm like, well, thank God I can do that for the PS4 games now because and the main thing I wanted to do is like games. In some cases, they're not even games that seem like they have a ton of they don't take up as much space as some others, but they just make my PS4 get like really loud because it's just really struggling because they're very high-end graphic games. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna move
The
all of those
graphics
ones
card
like
is dying.
so yeah, I'm just like, screw it. I'll move all of those games onto the 8 terabyte drive and then plug that into the PS5. So now they'll actually be able to play in a console that won't feel like it's going to have a heart attack if it's trying to play like Marvel Spider-Man, for instance. I feel like after a while that was giving my PS4 trouble. So it was like, oh, okay, I just won't play that on the PS4 anymore.
Um,
Oh, glad you got it.
yeah.
Yeah.
At least you got it and
I
it's been
noticed
working out.
after our last podcast, I just randomly went on to like the Walmart website and it let me add a PS5 to my cart without saying anything. I'm kind of wondering if that means that there's less of a shortage now, or if I would have checked out and then gotten an email saying they were out of stock.
Mm.
Or if maybe on your way to checking out, it'll tell you there's currently none in stock. We are going to order them, and once yours comes in, we'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like it let me get as far as viewing the cart without saying anything, and I've had pants that I've added to my cart, and then they were like, "Oh, your size is out of stock," and so I was a little surprised by that didn't happen with the PS5.
Yeah, interesting.
Either
Unless
way,
they just happen to
either
have
way,
some at the moment.
I'm not paying for a PS5 this month, so
Yeah.
probably the earliest would be after Christmas, and who knows, any supplies they have now might be gone by Christmas.
Maybe.
Mm.
Most likely, actually. By Christmas, yeah.
No. I definitely assume there'll be another drop by the end of the year for specifically with Christmas in mind.
So on my end, I've been pretty busy with. It's a busy time for the nonprofit I work with. We've been basically trying to put together a proposal to restructure the whole organization, and I'm on the team, kind of like interviewing people and stuff for that. So I've been having 2 to 3 meetings a week for that. Um, I think I mentioned in our last podcast that, or I think, or I think it was with that I'll have a little more free time after the first week of October, because that's when that is finally due and presented, and all of the strict deadlines wear off.
Okay.
In other news, I had been wondering for a while why the Twitter account for the podcast, why uh, Twitter was sending emails to me, like they recommend tweets, and for some reason it always seemed to include one thirst trap from random accounts I didn't follow, and I was like, somebody that we follow for Doctor Who must be apparently liking or retweeting thirst traps. And I've just found who it was, I think, and it's somebody who's been a guest on the podcast a few times.
Oh.
So yeah, that's interesting. But now I know the culprit. Not that I could really do anything about it without unfollowing, but
Right.
I just
It's
thought
like,
that was interesting.
Oh, okay.
It's like, why are you emailing me about OnlyFans people? I've never done anything with this account or really any account to make you think I want you to send me OnlyFans like advertisements.
See, this is why I hate Twitter. This is spam. Useless spam. No, just because one of our follows shares these kind of things doesn't mean we're interested. Thank you.
Well, that's also like at one point I had to unfollow a YouTuber that I knew because he just happens to have no problem liking and retweeting NSFW accounts from people that he knows. And
Pretty sure I know who
meanwhile,
you mean.
like I huh?
I'm pretty sure I know who you mean too.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so like I would be like at my job, which I worked for, 30 hours a week, checking like my Twitter or whatever, like in between, like at late at night or when it got slow, and I'd be like, I can't have like these, softcore porn on my timeline in my hand while I'm at work.
Right. I'm sorry, but I can't be following you no more. You're not
Right.
safe for me.
Like Twitter needs a for work and not for work mode.
Hmm.
Also needs a stop sending the spam button. Heaven forbid. Yeah, anywho, as for me, it's been an interesting mix of things this week. The hacking cough is almost gone. The gunk in the back of my nose is almost gone. I actually had some relatively decent, seemingly fast days at work, and then I've had some really tedious, god-awful days at work. The worst had to have been Sunday, though. That one, technically not the fault of the person who made the accident, but we had an accident where they went to dump the cooking oil for the chicken, and they, instead of doing one at a time, for whatever reason, they happened to do both. And I think they realized too late what they had accidentally done. And half the oil that we cooked chicken in just went across the kitchen floor.
Mm.
This means
I've
that I
been
had to
there.
walk around it all night in order to get the things I needed to clean certain other parts of my job. This meant also that this poor girl who's only been at this job maybe a week or two, had to sit there from about 7 o'clock until 9:30, trying to do the best she could at cleaning up that mess, with the assistant manager there to help continue scrubbing, and afterwards go right into dishes because, well, food was shut down almost all night, and there was no way they were going to bother making any more food because they just literally needed to scrub everything now.
Mm.
I also heard that apparently afterwards people were questioned the next day. A lot of people who were training this girl, and basically the only answer they could give was, we told her not to do it. If she did it, it was either an accident or of her own volition.
Mm.
So, yeah. So whatever the case may be, this is a harsh lesson to learn.
Right. What did you say was the cause again?
So the vats of cooking oil, there's two of them in the one machine
Right.
that you dunk all of the chicken into.
Right.
Instead of switching one of them to drain at a time through the box and to go into where it needs to go
Right.
when you're done, they accidentally hit both. For a reason, both were hit. Yeah. Both were switched on the drain.
What
And
did that
so
entail?
one goes in and the other one
So
just drains on the floor.
There wasn't enough people to clean up and to cook at the same time, basically? Because you said food was closed for the night? Or you just mean it was already the end of the night?
No, we usually make food until up till 9:30. Problem is
Gotcha.
that this newbie was cleaning this mess until 9:30.
Right. I'm guessing she didn't try ice.
No. Why would we try ice?
I say that, but it depends on the type of oil. But usually, ice thickens the oil usually and makes it easier to clean. Like the oil
Usually
that's
what
on
we
the floor.
do, because we are a gas station, is we actually have oil pickup. Like we have this
Okay.
rocky powdery stuff that we throw down that we usually use for
Gotcha.
gas, but we will use it for the oil in the kitchen too, as well as kitty litter.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we don't have like an endless supply of ice outside of the fountain machine, and that's gonna melt as fast as you lay it down. That would not really do much to stop this oil. So it was endless hours of first laying that stuff down and then picking that up, and then after that was off the floor, using the mop and bucket with a bunch of extra degreaser in it to eventually clean the floor. It looked good by the time we were done, but that was like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock after we're pretty much closed. But yeah, because of that, I couldn't get...
I'd have to see the setup. It just feels weird to me that it took that. I mean, other than the fact that it was a newbie, but like I've been in that exact situation, and we definitely would not spend hours just cleaning it. But I have no idea what your setup is, so I can't really judge.
I'm not sure what you mean by setup, but there was literally only 2 people that could get at it. The other gal was busy doing little odds and ends and cleaning up food on the floor, and I did what I could because half of the stuff I needed to do my cleaning was there being used to clean the kitchen. So, yeah, and also because of that, I couldn't get warm food for dinner, so I had to literally wait until I bought a pizza at work, took it home, and cooked it and had it for dinner at midnight. So, yeah, it was kind of a rough day.
I feel that.
It was pretty much a rough day for everybody. It's just like, ugh. Let's not do this again. And then I get also asked, are you sure you don't want to go full time? And I'm like, that thing that just happened on Sunday. Imagine at least 4 more of those happening. That's my theory on how my time in the kitchen will go. No, I don't want to do that. Thank you.
At least without a car.
That's my theory on how that will go down in there, and there's also some other theories in mining that include also maybe some accidents, because I am very prone to that in kitchens, apparently. It took a good half a year for my knuckles to heal after McDonald's. So, thanks again, no thanks.
All right. So on tonight's show, we've got birthday and news, including some long-awaited news. We have no Geek Talk coming up, so then that would lead directly into our episode summary and our review, final thoughts, and ratings. And since I spent the entire hour talking last time, doing both my job and Rand's, news is hereby listed on our spreadsheet as Alex's.
But yes. So okay, starting with birthdays. On the 14th of September, we have Fadi El Sayed. Played Ram Singh in Class, turned 29. Also on the 14th, Colin McFarlane played General Pierce in 4 episodes of Torchwood Children of Earth, plus additional Doctor Who roles. Turned 61. On the 17th, Dinah Sheridan, who played Chancellor Flavia in The 5 Doctors, would have been 102, but died in 2012 at 92. On the 18th, we have Gary Russell, who was the script editor of Torchwood and Sarah Jane Adventures from 2008 to 2010. Was a writer, director, and actor in dozens of Big Finish audios. Turned 59. On the 19th is Caroline John, who played Liz Shaw. Would have been 82, but died in 2012 at the age of 71. And on the 20th, we have Meena Anwar, who played Geeta Chandra from 2008 to 2010, plus additional Doctor Who roles, turned 53.
That's twice on that list that the Spectre of 2012 haunts us, and it'll also come up again later in this podcast.
Hmm. So moving on to that, we have Doctor Who news. And we finally have a name for the centenary special, and that is The Power of the Doctor, which, my mind immediately went to the jokes about, well, we have Day of, and now we've got Power of, so now we need Planet of, Death
Evil,
2.
Evil of the Doctor.
Yeah. It's like, just need to gradually have all the Dalek titles repurposed.
Chibnall missed a trick. He could have named an episode Genesis of the Doctor. I mean, he pissed everybody else off anyway.
Yeah, it's so. Of course, it's funny that this article also brings up the Power of 3, and I'm like, oh, that's a bad omen, because I hate that episode.
Don't tempt us.
Why does it mention Power of 3?
Oh, just a matter of like similar name kind of thing, which is weird because it's like, well, it's just the Power of 3, not like
Right.
Power of the. It's not
It's
X
not
Y.
the blank of the
it has-
blank.
Just because it has the word power in it.
Well, I guess probably more so because it's a Chibnall written episode that has power in the title, maybe.
Wait, Chibnall's writing this one? No, I'm like, no, it's just, sorry. My brain. Okay, yeah. All right. So Chibnall wrote Power 3 back in the day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although the worst part about Power, I mean, as many issues as we can have with how the Doctor was written in Power of 3, the worst part of it was apparently the guest star's fault, which still makes me wonder why they even aired that episode if the guest star was basically like, fuck you, I'm not doing what you tell me.
No. Or if they could have just recast and just held
You mean
off.
the guy that was on like the end ship at the end of the episode? That just kind of showed up and then just kind of ran off again?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that... literally, it was already down to just only appearing at the end. You might as well just recast them if they were going to be such a pain in the neck.
Yeah, I don't... Like, they could have reshot that scene with somebody else if it came down to it, unless...
As a matter of fact, literally reshooting it with somebody else is a trick, like, right out of the 80s. So there's... I think it was called Alone in the Dark, which was a New Line Cinema movie before they became a big studio. They hired Jack Palance to be the main bad guy, but he refused to lurk around in the dark, so they shot around him with other doubles.
Unless this is one of those episodes where they're like, we shot it in July, sent it to effects in August, and aired it in September, sort of deal.
They didn't even have that many effects. There's like maybe a couple scenes in the third act that actually had any special effects in them. Most of it looked like it could have been just set shots. At least that's what I recall of the episode.
Yeah. But this is not our Power of 3 review. So
Anyways,
moving
yes.
Yeah. Additionally, Doctor Who magazine has teased a possible scene for the Power of the Doctor, which the implication from what I'm reading seems to be that people are assuming that there is going to be a Reichenbach Falls moment. Which I guess, given that the Master showed up, like, the logic behind creating the Master in the first place seemed to be, well, we have Sherlock Holmes. Where's Moriarty? So, I mean, I feel like it'd be a bit on the nose, but at the same time, why not? Um, Curious as to how that would play out, but
Yeah, not sure. Not unless they're borrowing some old ideas. I don't know.
and
We
of course,
know neither of them will really die.
yeah.
Although that might trigger both the regenerations. Who knows?
That might be, yeah, that might actually be the way they bring about both regenerations and both Doctor and Master for this particular run.
Which, you know, it's funny. The more I think about it, the more I'm just like, and the more I watch Classic Who, the more I'm like, can we just stop with the regenerations where people are standing up? And if something like that happens and it triggers a regeneration, that possibly could. But I guess the clips we've seen in teasers, I think, have like, or at least on the next time thing, from the last story, definitely gave the impression that Jodie was like aware of the regeneration as it was about to happen. So seems like we're probably not going to be getting
As long as we don't get a
deviation.
fucking Moffat ass. Oh well, I know I'm regenerating, so I'm gonna go off on a whole hour-long multi-doctor adventure for the sake of putting off my regeneration because that's something I can do now.
Mm.
I'm going to
Like I
die,
don't
but
hate.
before I die, let's just go across the universe.
Yeah, I don't hate Twice Upon a Time, but that aspect of it I really do hate.
Mm. Um, we also have some more stuff related to it, related to the special. Um, and like, I'm not surprised that they bring this up because I've definitely like the first time we saw little teasers of what the master's gonna look like, I think my head went to Rasputin. So
Mm-hmm.
I think
it's like,
everyone's did, yeah.
yeah.
Well, everyone who's familiar with Rasputin, anyway.
I mean, I could.
And to be honest, to have the Master be Rasputin would be just kind of like, you know, maybe.
I mean,
Actually, yeah, considering it would kind of fit.
yeah. Especially with the whole they tried to kill him multiple times and nothing worked.
Right, right.
Just and then we just end the attempts on Rasputin's life with literally a Mr. Science Theater quote: "We tried to kill him with the forklift." You just see a forklift go into the water after Rasputin falls in.
Although then you'd have to wonder what did they pickle in that jar?
Ooh my.
Yeah, that part in itself was nothing new, and I was like, why is there an article on this? But they do include like a couple of other, I guess, like teaser photos that have been shared this month, including the master, including the fact that he uses the TCE on somebody, apparently. I'm not sure if we can zoom in enough to see who it is.
Um,
Oh, you mean that picture, that first picture of him sitting there?
Yeah.
Isn't that his screwdriver?
No, it's definitely a person.
yeah, it's definitely a little person.
Open.
Just not
It
sure
kind of
who.
looks like somebody in a white
Open
wife beater and
image.
jeans, but it's when you get that close, it's too pixelated to tell.
And the lighting, it could be like it could maybe
Yeah,
be
it's
a
true. The
white.
lighting
It could
too.
also be yellow.
Hmm.
It does look like a whitish top with black pants. Yes.
But
So
it
Yeah,
seems
not
either
sure.
way, Either way, we know it's not the Cybermen that we know seems to have gotten better.
Right.
He turned me into
Oh.
an action figure. An action figure?
Uh,
I got better.
I upgraded.
you know what? I saw someone speculate just now that it might have been Yaz, and looking at the photo underneath, the
Oh,
outfit kind of matches.
shit. Are we gonna get another companion
I mean, there's
death?
no coming back from that, is if that's how they kill Yaz off.
Yeah. There's supposed to be no coming back, but then again, the Cyberman came
Hmm.
back apparently. So,
If it were Moffat, we know that the Doctor would go back, would cross her own time stream, and go back in time to stop the Master from tissue compressing her.
but somehow in the
I don't-
meantime, make her immortal.
Yeah.
right.
Alternatively, I could also see the Master having just like come up with something that looks like Yaz just to fuck with the Doctor.
That too, given this master in particular.
Hmm. Like maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Like, if anything, I for all his faults, I trust Chimmel at least to not do the cop out. Like, if that's Yaz's death, that's Yaz's
Yaz's
death.
death, yeah.
That's
Right.
not. There's no like,
mean,
dead but not really. I feel like Chibnall
I'd
would just
like to
go for
trust
it.
him not to lean hard into kill your lesbians, but
Well, yeah,
he might.
We'll see.
right.
You
That
never know.
said, I know we don't have great lighting to tell. That skin tone, like if you look at the arms and the way they glow in the light, it seems more like somebody with like more of a whiter skin than Yaz, but it's really hard to tell, of
It
course.
really is hard to tell for sure.
Again, to that end, putting someone in Yaz's clothes and then doing it to them to screw with the Doctor until the Doctor's up close and can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that seems like something the Master would pull.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah.
And that, and also purposely giving us an image too small to zoom in is also them just literally teasing us.
But yeah, I will say, if Yaz is killed off, they've at the very least set up that she's the sort of companion who would not willingly leave, because she's essentially cut everything else off in her life except the Doctor now at this point.
At this point, yes, she really has.
So it's like they make it clear, like,
if
Ryan
they are
and
going to send off
Graham-
Yaz, that would be one of the few ways they could make it to happen.
What wild theory based on nothing? That's actually Yaz's boss, and therefore, when she defeats the Master and proves his death, she can go back to the cops and be like, "I was undercover, capturing the person who killed whatever her boss's name is," and that's how she gets her job back as a cop.
I think you might need a stretch before you reach that hard. Yeah, it seems a little bit far for me. Also, wasn't her boss like a heavier set guy?
I have no idea.
From
We
what I
saw him
recall.
only. I think we saw him twice.
Twice, maybe 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a different boss. I don't know.
And both times he was telling her off for missing work so much.
Then you wonder why she didn't go back to work. She's basically done. Anywho, anything else?
I think that's it for that one.
Yeah.
Already big finish then.
Yep. So from Big Finish new releases, on the 14th of September, we saw the release of the 10th Doctor Classic Companions, written by John Dorney, Lizzie Hopley, and Roy Gill, starring David Tennant, John Leeson, Louise Jameson, Sarah Sutton, and Sophie Aldred. On the 20th, which for you guys would be today.
Yep.
Um,
Well, for Matt now, for me, it was 25 minutes ago.
um, we saw the release of The New Adventures of Bernice Summerfield of Blood and Steel, written by James Goss, Aaron Lamont, Roshana Patel, and Victoria Saxton, and starring Lisa Bowerman, David Warner, and Nicholas Briggs.
So interesting note on that. I noticed that today or yesterday or whatever you choose to call it, Lisa Bowerman did quote tweet the announcement of that saying the final trip. We know it's not David Warner's final audio drama because he's supposed to appear with Christopher Eccleston in something, but we haven't confirmed if that was Big Finish or not. So I'm wondering if that means that this is the very last recording that they had with David Warner as the Doctor traveling with Lisa Bowerman.
That's most
or
likely
something
likely.
along those lines. Yeah.
That's most likely what she meant by that. Is that this is going to be the last adventure she's going to have with Bernice and him.
Which, if that's accurate, that would mean that she's not in the story he did with Eccleston. But then again, we don't actually know if he's playing the Doctor in that story yet because we literally only have that one Eccleston quote to go off and nothing from Big Finish about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, probably because it's probably not out for a whole year, but anyway, yeah.
It's going to be wild.
Yeah,
I
just thought that was worth mentioning. Oh, I never flipped a coin. Can do that while Matt is going to want a stopwatch for the summary.
Yes.
Okay, tell me when to count down.
Actually, really quick, I need to open up a tab in the other window here because I'm trying to remember names. My brain will not remember.
And there's a lot of names in this story.
And gosh, why can't my brain even remember what the name of the episode was?
Lost in Time.
Yeah. Lost in Time. There we go. You know what? They won't even give me the names I'm looking for, so you know what? I think I know what I'll just go with. Okay. I'll go with the names that they give. All right, so ready?
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so the episode starts off with Sarah and company showing up in front of a store, which recently had a newspaper article put out that they had encountered a strange beast lurking around the area. At least the owner claims to have seen it at his store. Sarah, Clyde, and Ronnie go in to try and investigate. They first meet a parrot that just sits there and makes a few noises. They investigate some of the interesting antiques in the building before the apparent shopkeeper comes out and starts talking to them. The shopkeeper then starts to further quickly allude to the fact that he's aware that the Sarah Jane in particular is a time traveler and that all of them have encountered it to at least some degree, and he has something very special that he needs to ask them to do, which is to find these 3 different relics in 3 different time places and to bring them back before the Earth is otherwise sucked into it, basically the time vortex, and destroyed because these particular relics have shown up at the right place at the right time and can attune a lot of stuff to happen and basically just rip time apart and cause this all to happen. So he sends the 3 of them to different places individually to try and find these objects. They're supposed to be made of metal, and they'll know it when they see it. And sure enough, once a couple of them see particular metal objects, they do have a particular sheen to them and a particular sparkle, but they only seem to be the only ones to see it. Clyde is the first one to see this as he is sent back to Britain in World War II era. He dodges some Nazis alongside a boy named George, and they get tricked into coming back when the person that they thought they could trust turns out to be a double agent. They're tied up again, but the object that the Nazis are using is a thing that's supposed to stop radio signals, and if they can get their hands on it, not only can they allow the radio signals to work and allow the detection of the incoming enemy craft, but they could also help warn the locals that something's going on and Clyde could get out of there. After a bit of back and forth, they manage to do so. Clyde manages to get the object and says his goodbyes to George before disappearing right before his eyes. So while this is going on, I will say these other two stories are also going on for each individual. For Ronnie, she is sent back even further into time, the furthest out of all three of them. She's meets Queen Jane, I believe it was.
I believe so.
Yeah. She the 9-day queen. She is sent there, and she is accidentally believed to be the Eastern woman that's supposed to come over to be a new aide. And after a short period of time, Ronnie proves herself to be not only very well spoken, but also a very well mannered person, despite her odd dress upon showing up. She gains the trust of the queen and finds out that one of her closest friends is actually conspiring to murder her so that she becomes a figurehead as opposed to languishing in a dungeon for unknown periods of time before then being quietly killed by the queen that's trying to take over. Turns out that the dagger that's meant for the queen in this particular instance is the object that Ronnie needs to find. She manages to stop the murder and stays a little bit longer, just long enough to help persuade the queen that everything's going to be fine and that she's not going to die for no reason, that she actually will be remembered despite everything going on and how bad people think this is going to turn out. She then takes the knife and also promptly disappears back to the present, which then leaves us with Sarah Jane. She shows up at I guess you could call it a large house or a small manor or something like. She shows up there with a girl who's trying to ghost hunt, essentially. It's the late 1800s, and she's trying to find spirits because this is a reportedly very haunted house, and she recently suffered the loss of her mother. Sarah Jane, of course, as we know very well at this point, can understand that particular bit of childhood trauma, having suffered a loss of her parents very early in her age, in her life, and tries to set about trying to figure out what's going on. After resetting the clock to 8 o'clock, after experiencing a bit of weird voices and stuff, and what appeared to, what they could understand of the audio that they were hearing, the death of 2 children to a fire, they restarted again, and this time they actually managed to get some visuals as they go about it. They managed to chase the ghosts back up to the room, and they realized that the girl's trauma of her mother dying recently is allowing her to almost interact with the images they're seeing, allowing her to finally turn the key, which turns out to be the object they're looking for, and saving the children. The Sarah was able to go back to present, but in her attempt to go back, she was delayed, and the girl manages to accidentally pull the key from her. She managed, in the time that lapsed between then and Sarah Jane showing up at the present, she was able to tell her children and grandchildren of the story of the woman she met while ghost hunting, sends her granddaughter to get the key there at the right time and the right date, and they manage to get all 3 objects and save the world. The shopkeeper smiles very happily, boxes everything up, and tells them that they did very well and that he and the captain's work is done for now, and the 2 of them disappear promptly as the rest of the crew then leave. And I'm very late at stopping, so there we go.
Right. So by my count, that's 6 hours and 8. I mean,
6
not
hours. Wow.
6 minutes and 8.9 seconds.
I got 6 on my end, but 6 hours, my dude.
I think it was at least a second and a half after I said go before you started talking. So
something
that
along
might
those
have been
lines,
it.
possibly. There's always a bit of a delay, even if we don't know it audio, anyways.
Right.
Over stuff like this. But yeah, 6 minutes. honestly, it's a two-parter, and there's a lot to actually say.
I think you did go into a bit of extra detail at times, like you were talking about Sarah Jane's history and such, but
I only said very briefly, if we know anything about Sarah Jane, we know her history on this.
All right. Or yeah, actually, I think it's worth putting a note in here. So, the characters of the shopkeeper and the captain, I looked them up because I just knew knowing whether or not this was the only story they appeared in would be necessary in order to figure out my score. Because it's we have to rate, the story, including these characters. And while they do appear again in another story they're reviewing, the final story with them was never shot because they were supposed to appear in the season 5 finale. Where's the note? I'm not seeing the note either way. So they were supposed to appear in the season 5 finale. However, that due to Elizabeth Sladen's passing, due to cancer, I believe, that finale was never filmed. So we do not actually, due to no fault of the creative team, we do not know the full story or the origins of the shopkeeper and the captain. So it's kind of open to each individual person what that means when it comes down to our ratings.
Well, to be honest, it's not beyond Doctor Who to have these seemingly immortal beings on the outside that are looking in and occasionally will get at least distantly involved.
All right, so with that, what we like about the episode, and for the first time in several weeks, the coin flip went differently, so Matt is first.
What I liked about the episode. You know what? I have to say it yet again. My word, is Sarah Jane such a good children's show? It will cover many different topics, even all at once in this particular story, and still pulls no punches. We get kids being held up at gunpoint by literal Nazis from World War II. We have children being set to burn alive in one other story. And the other story is literally the murder of a would-be queen. And her last moments before she's imprisoned.
Yeah. And not even to mention that it's like a teenager at best.
Yes.
As well.
Also a teenager, not a person that would widely be considered not of age by at least 2 years.
Younger than younger than all of the main characters at this point. Yeah.
Not to mention they also dropped the soft N word, which that threw me off. Even Doctor Who hasn't done that. Well, New Who hasn't anyway.
Yeah, New Who has definitely not touched
Classic
that word yet.
Classic had a hard one, but
not even in the the bus boycott episode.
Not that I can recall.
I don't
I'm trying
think
to remember.
No. Maybe
but
I
they did.
Don't think so. I think they just had like the guy hit, but that was I don't think he called him that particular word.
Gotcha.
So they held off on that, but they did like.
It's funny too because I sincerely doubt that Germans were using Spanish words when labeling people.
Right.
But I guess that's something where it's worth.
I'm not
the
exactly aware what the
clearly.
Nazis should or did not say for words when they were trying to learn English either. So
yeah,
right.
And like I said, it probably makes sense in that case just because they know, like Big Finish, they probably would have put an actual German word in there because their target audience is over 20.
Yeah.
Whereas Sarah Jane's target audience is in like middle school, so they want to make sure
even
it's
the soft word
understandable.
would make a lot of kids go ooh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, they do actually have a scene where the Germans are talking amongst themselves and they are speaking German,
Mm.
which was also surprising because it's like, oh, all right, this isn't Doctor Who, so they don't have the TARDIS excuse.
Yeah. Once again, Sarah Jane does not pull punches. They're a very learned group that were making this show.
Mhm.
So yeah.
So that was still Matt.
Yeah, that was the
Yep.
end of mine. So
All right. So on to Alex.
Ooh, well, my first one was essentially taken because of essentially what mine was going to boil down to was essentially the same thing of like them not talking down to kids and like going with some very like dark for this show anyway stuff. So let's see, I guess I like that we get three very distinct journeys for all three, and it's not just like a carbon copy scenario, but in different times, which they easily could have done.
Mhm.
But you know, we have like
We have Ronnie who has to actually preserve history in a big way there. You got Clyde who
Mhm.
ends up in a less for sure kind of history thing, but ends up doing the overall right thing that needs to happen there and still finds his object. And then we get Sarah Jane who's literally gotta do some weird time warp thing with another character to try and get the thing that she needs.
Yeah.
Clyde knew that Germany defeating England in 1941 was not the way history was meant to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So him having to stop that, I imagine either way was going to have to be a thing.
Mhm. But yeah, we definitely had one that was much more informed by knowing specifics of history, and it was a good thing that the shopkeeper knew which person to send to which scenario, because Clyde would not have had any idea about any queens,
Yeah, Clyde would
unless
not be
maybe
the boy with the mindset for that. Yeah.
I mean, maybe if history class showed photos, you'd be like, oh yeah, she was the pretty one. That would be all he'd remember.
uh
Okay. So you said the three different stories. So what I liked is that we got out of London. That's the downside of shows like Sarah Jane Adventures, where obviously you don't have a TARDIS, so you make do with what you have. But sometimes you get tired of seeing Bannerman Road and the school and everything else. So this was a nice way to get out of the normal setting and see, in fact, multiple different settings in this case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Multiple, very different settings all at once.
Yeah.
Like all
Although
still
they
in
were all in
England,
England.
but
Yeah.
they're all in England, but in different time periods, and like
It was
Radically
one we
different
get,
places.
and yeah, like it's in that way, it's kind of funny because like in one we have a house, one we have a castle, essentially, a Tower of London. It's supposed to be in, and
yeah.
the other we get a church, but also a bit of countryside because they're not
Mm-hmm.
entirely in the
Not entirely
church.
based in that church, yeah. There's a lot of before and a little bit after.
Mm. So
Yeah,
even though
it was so very nice of whoever did the smithing of these I guess you could call them some sort of keys that open time. Whoever smithed those was nice enough just to scatter them about, English history and no farther.
The
All
words of
right.
the second
So we
Doctor, Earth seems very susceptible to these kind of issues for some reason.
right. All right. What we disliked about the episode, starting with Matt.
Overall dislike. I have to say, as much as they are interesting group, the shopkeeper and the captain, I really wish we knew more. They just really kind of show up and go, "Here you go," whoosh, and bye bye.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, their introduction and their putting Sarah and company into this particular mess is so rushed. You would be confused to think at first that they're villains. They are literally doing this to save the world, but it's like, wait, what?
I literally spent the entire story like, okay, they're going to get back. They're going to give the guy this chronostein, and he's going to be like, thanks for giving me the weapons that I made to take over time or take over the earth. And they're going to have like 10 minutes to stop him. And that never happened. He was just like, okay, cool, bye.
Okay, cool. Yep, this is done. Me and the captain's work are done here. Thank you very much. We'll maybe see you later sometime. Bye. Whoosh.
That was what I felt like I had to look him up because I was like, I don't trust, like, the circumstances are too weird for me to trust that he's a good guy without seeing more. Like,
But there's still
why,
more. There was
you know,
apparently attempts to show us more, and that they are in fact still
Right.
good guys, but never
like
happened.
what caused this? Why is he
Mm.
here? Etc. Etc.
Yeah.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, like essentially latching onto that, my main thing is like it is very the setup, like as much as the execution of like them splitting off into 3 time periods and etc is pulled off very well. Getting us there is very like, hey, you got to do this thing, go. And it's like that's a bit rushed. I mean, I guess to be fair, they only have like 2 half-hour episodes to get everything
Yeah.
in, but it's still like,
This could have definitely benefited from being a 3-parter.
or
Except
at the very
Sarah Jane Adventures doesn't do 3-parters.
yeah, or at the very least, like more time spent, like not even all that much really, but just like a couple more minutes at the start. Like maybe have them start like rather than talking about the shop outside, talking about it as they're walking in, and then like we can have a like another minute to give an explanation or something. Because it's
I
very
do
just,
appreciate the fact that Sarah Jane never said yes, okay. She kept
yeah.
asking questions until he was like, boom, back in time with you. So she never really got to that point of like, she knew that shit was smelled fishy, but she just didn't have the opportunity,
Yeah.
which is a very doctor position to be in.
Mm.
Okay, all done with that?
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. Yeah, so I think the elephant in the room is taken. Um, I think I was going to say the like future ghost thing, but the more I think about it, the more I don't actually mind it, considering like what the whole linchpin of the whole thing was.
Mm.
Um, I may actually have to pass at this point because I think like the obvious things are taken, and I'm not sure I have a non-obvious thing to say. Definitely the whole like the whole thing with the shopkeeper and the captain, it just seems too abbreviated, as we've already mentioned. It
Mm.
could have used more time. It felt a bit rushed, but as for the nitty-gritty of the stories, it's not really that needing complaining about.
Mm.
Um, so I think I might actually end up having to pass from that. Unless anybody has a second choice that wasn't taken.
Not that I can think of.
All right. So I guess we move on to favorite scenes, starting with Matt.
Favorite scenes. Well, we do joke about Clive not always being the most history-minded. He does at least get broad strokes, and when he's sitting there watching with George, seeing the Nazis, he's kind of like, "Are you absolutely sure?" And then as soon as he sees the jackets open, he's like, "Oh shit, yep, there it is." And he at least had a rough idea of the time frame, which was the late 30s to early 40s.
Right. Yeah, he was like 1939 or something, and they're like, "Oh, what are you dense? It's 1941," and he's like, "Yeah, he wasn't that far off."
Off by 2 years. Being that he wasn't from around then, it's entirely possible.
Right. Okay, Alex.
Oh, there's actually a few I could go with, but honestly, I'm just gonna go with Ronnie reassuring
Jane.
Jane Grey. Yeah, that's like, no, you will absolutely be remembered, and that because I feel like, and I generally like that whole thing because she doesn't try to stop her dying. She stops her
Yeah.
dying in that specific thing.
She knows
It's
that
like,
changing history is not the way to solve things.
yeah, it's like, well, yeah, you are going to die, but you are going to be remembered for centuries. So it's like, a little helping her go to her death with a bit less stress.
All right, so for my scene, I'm going to say the scene where Clyde distracts the Nazis by talking and pretending his phone is a bomb by playing music, which gives which gives George the time to which gives George the chance to actually get the piece of chronostein out of the machine and solve what they actually need to happen. So that was very good improvisation and teamwork on behalf of Clyde and George, and it kind of goes along with all the others. It shows that Clyde is capable on his own, which I'm not sure if that's something we had seen to this point of him being able to solving something without needing Ronnie or someone around to help. So it was a very good moment for him.
Yeah.
Although
That was
maybe
a very
not a
good
great
proving
moment.
movement.
Maybe not a great moment once he shows up to his mom and is like, "Oh yeah, I left my phone in the 1940s, and hope hopefully they don't reverse engineer the broken bits. But in the meantime, I don't have a phone and I have nothing to show insurance." All right. So least favorite scenes, starting again with Matt.
Least favorite. I have to say, even though I do like it in general, I have to say the whole rewinding the clock and starting the ghosts over again and they become finally visible feels a little shoehorned. It is a little shoehorny, and that's basically a shoehorn that's needed in order for them to actually find the object, even though they literally walked right through it earlier.
It was like a fucking cheat code in a video game. It's
So
there's
Sergey just walked around in a circle, hit both shoulder buttons twice, and lo and behold, we're doing it again, and this time it's actually visible.
Oh, we have to come back at 8 o'clock tomorrow. What if we change the system clock and say that it's 8 o'clock tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very like the ticking clock kind of working against them because it's like, well, they can't literally wait another day.
Right.
because there's no time. But yeah, it's just like, you would think. So I guess it like the clock is just a way around it. Like the clock is somehow affected as well to allow that to work because why else would that
I think
work?
that was them writing themselves out of a corner.
Right, yeah.
Now, if they had been like, if they had been in the beginning, like, the sand will run out in 30 hours, so you need to
Yeah.
be back within 30 hours, then there
Yeah.
would have been time for it, but there wasn't time for it, so they had to BS a
Mhm.
response.
Hmm. Which, speaking of which, that kind of leads into mine, because mine is the cliffhanger of the first episode being, oh no, the sands are about to run out. If they don't get back, they'll be stuck. Halfway through the next episode,
Right.
they're still fine. So
Oh.
it's like,
Right, right.
what? There's no rush.
Like, I thought that was like a next episode, like, preview, and I kept waiting for that scene to show up, and I was like, that scene never showed up. I guess they have plenty of time.
Yeah, it's very like maybe if they just like had him emphasize that they are running low on time and they need to be quicker or something, but not like, oh god, no, they're almost out of time when they've got like half an episode left before the sands actually run out. And even then, they don't like, they're still there and whatever, but it's still very like that's it's one of those like it's almost like some of the sillier classic Who cliffhangers where it's like, oh no, they've been captured. Oh, okay, they're fine.
Right,
They're
right.
being they're being threatened, but they're not being like assaulted or anything. They're just, sort of captured.
Like some of
Uh,
the Batman 66 cliffhangers. Oh no, there's a bomb. Oh, the bomb went off, but it was nowhere near anybody and nobody got hurt.
Right.
All right. So for mine, I think I'm gonna have to go with the ending where he was just like, "Oh yeah, I have my suitcase, which is already perfectly shaped for all of these things, even though I had no shape idea what shape they were going to be in an episode and a half ago. And then I'm just gonna take them and I'm gonna deuce out, and you're still gonna have no idea who I am or how they got here. Uh, you know, your guess is as good as anybody else's, and it was a really unsatisfying ending, and it just felt like there was so much relevant information for it to be a true story. Like,
Mhm.
looking at it in the context of a multi-episode story, be like, okay, maybe this was act one. But if I view
mm,
this episode on its own, which I have to because we don't have the whole story, if I have to view this episode on its own, and on its own, it makes no sense that these things came out of nowhere and he came to find them, but he couldn't find them, so he had to find somebody else.
Mhm.
And it just doesn't, there's no conclusion to it. It's anticlimactic, and it does not explain where these things just got pulled out of his asshole.
mm,
And why somebody went around doing things like locking. Maybe it was the trickster, which is what they used to explain everything in Sarah Jane. Maybe
Yes.
the trickster locked a door, and the trickster gave this girl a sword, and gave the Nazis a piece of metal that they thought belonged to Thor. I don't fucking know, but it's not satisfying in its present form.
mm.
Mhm. Oh, also, actually, I've been doing some very quick digging here myself on the shopkeeper and the captain.
Okay.
Would you like to hear Russell T Davies' theory on who the shopkeeper
Oh,
is?
that wasn't even his original, right? That was like a retcon theory, wasn't it?
Upon reading 11 Things You Probably Didn't Know About the Corsair, Russell T Davies said that he believed the shopkeeper was an incarnation of the Corsair.
Hmm. And the Corsair was invented by Neil Gaiman in 2011, I think. So a year after this episode.
Mm. So yeah. Long story short, there's actually there were some concept arts which Davies was involved in, and a couple of the concepts for the Corsair was a dark-skinned man, and another one of the concepts shows him with a parrot. So
You
there's
said
at least
that
a couple
Davies
of
was
concepts.
involved in. I thought it was just. I
There's
thought
a
it
couple of
was. I
concepts
didn't
that
think
were
he had anything
early
to do
on
with
that apparently this was aimed at.
Oh. And
I
of
don't know. I
course
don't know
my
how
mouse
close Davies was
does.
involved with it, but apparently he was
Mhm.
aware of it.
Yeah, I was aware. I got the impression reading that note that was just something he came up with after Neil Gaiman published his stuff, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that would be cool if," and that was about it.
Originally, of course, the concept of the macaw, the parrot, was actually a different coloration of macaw, but still a macaw family. So, who knows? Maybe even the parrot regenerates. Who knows? um,
That's right. I just realized the White Guardian had a bird on its hat, didn't he?
it had feathers in one of his headpieces for sure.
Yep.
Mm.
At this point, until I see otherwise, my personal headcanon is that the shopkeeper is the White Guardian, because it's the only thing that both makes sense and does not involve the end of the world.
Well,
Because if he's
apparently
the
the Corsair's been brought up a couple
Guardian, then
times
the
now,
Black
so
Guardian
the
won,
Corsair is just as a able thing for me too. So we don't know for now. Always chances to bring back this character, to be honest, if they are smart enough to bring him back.
Right.
Because
definitely.
even,
I mean,
as many issues as we have with this character, because he's just not explained away enough. That's the good part about it, is that they could literally bring him back anytime and then drop the hat they can find, give us some decent explanations.
I mean, my problem is we have a character that we're not explained whether he's a good or a bad guy, coupled with the fact that he just sent Sarah Jane on this mission through time to collect allegedly like world-ending weapons that we have no idea how they got there. And the combination of not knowing how they got there and not knowing who this character is the issue for me.
Mm-hmm.
If we knew one or the other, I'd probably be okay with it.
Yeah.
Like, even if they explicitly were like, oh yeah, the trickster made these weapons somehow, I would be like, okay, maybe he's the trickster's like the yin to the trickster is yin and he's yang sort of deal. I could kind of get that, because I think
be
reading his article is that what they were kind of hinting at, but they never, there was never the chance to come out and say it, so we're forced to just deal with what's left.
Yeah, I guess that's
the
detriment
trickster
of this.
and the preserver.
Kind
I
of.
don't know, something along those lines.
Yeah, I guess it's it's one of those things where it's like, I'm curious if anyone involved with it has ever said, well, this is what was meant to happen, but we just never got to do it. Or if they're not saying anything on the off chance that someone running New Who decides, you know what, let's pick up on this thread.
Right.
Yeah, I really wish.
But the funny thing still is that Russell T is at least aware of it, so the ball's in his lap now.
Right. Like, I really wish they would just like publish the script to the Battle of Bannerman Road and be like, okay, this is the intended ending.
Right.
Yeah.
If nothing else, at least do that and like animate it and get some voice actors that can at least, if not get the actual actors, at least get some people in that could maybe do the voices of the intended characters.
Or even just get Big Finish to do it as an audio.
If nothing else, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not.
Matter of fact,
I think they may have recast. I think they recast young Sarah Jane, but never old Sarah Jane.
Well, as I was about to say, actually, if Big Finish thought about it, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you're listening, uh, maybe as a celebration to Elizabeth Sladen to the Battle of Bannerman Road. Big Finish,
Even if
maybe?
they just like tweak it so it's like very clearly after Sarah Jane's gone, so you don't have to get someone into player.
That too, you could always rewrite it to be all the kids from Bannerman Road, like all of them.
We know that Anjali Mohindra is down for, it seems, whatever they want to do, big Doctor Who wise. They could do it Companion Chronicle style, where Anjali Mohindra is just narrating the whole story from as Ronnie, and everything from her point of view.
Right.
Yeah.
At the very least, that if nothing else, I'm sure if you ask some of the other crew kids that are still around, they wouldn't be against at least coming in for a short audio thing.
Yeah. And again, I've also suggested several times that it would be fun to get not all, because that'd be a bit crowded, but some of them back for like a holiday special one-off thing.
Well, again, if it's a big Bannerman thing, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe some of them might not get bigger parts than some of the others, but still, you could definitely do something, especially if it's long enough.
Yeah. And you can specifically do that when either there's no companions, or the idea is that the companions are off doing their own thing at home, and the Doctor was just messing around and happened to stumble onto the Bannerman Road kids, all investigating something as well, and then they have a story with that, so they get a story. And aside from Luke has done at least one, but let the other kids have a spot on Doctor Who.
So that was least favorite scenes. So that brings us to final thoughts.
So that
starting
goes back
with
up
Matt.
Yep. I will say, once again, Sarah Jane, for the most part, knocks this thing out. I don't know how this children's show is so dang good. It pulls no punches. It does really good and interesting stories. It at least keeps it tame enough that kids can definitely watch this. Makes really interesting characters that, while we're frustrated not understanding them, they're at least good enough that they're really interesting and we want to know more. Kind of a deal, And again, giving all three of these main characters enough time to breathe and actually do their own thing and prove themselves as capable main characters in this series once again, all the way through. And also as give them all nice conclusions and tie things up, even though, again, the new interesting main character just kind of pops in and out too fast for us to really learn anything about him. Still gives us that taste of, ooh, this is an interesting character. Can we have more, please? So it's, again, maybe not exactly perfect, but there's a lot of really good things going on here. And also not very effects heavy either. The most effects heavy it gets is a couple of translucent doors and the kind of semi-glow glitter to the main items of the story that the characters need to find. And that's about it.
Except for the time window itself.
Oh, then the time window itself, but that's an easy to do effect too. I could do that effect for the most part. I just need a little time to make it look nice.
All right, all done?
Yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts.
Okay, Alex?
I really like this one. It's kind of funny that we've been on a bit of an unintentional string of we did something very bleak and then something that was dark but significantly toned down by comparison. And then what's probably, I don't know if it's the sort of darkest in tone in that sort of way that all three stories are dealing with death in some respect to a point.
They all have happy endings.
Well, right. I mean, it is still Sarah Jane Adventures, but Lady Jane Grey still is gonna go off to die, and
Aren't we all?
Like, there's the whole thing with the Nazis and such and whatever, and like saving the kids from dying, but the fact that the kids died in a fire and they like don't hold back on that to a point. I mean, they do,
At least in the first
like,
run through,
sort
yeah.
of. Yeah. Like, you don't hear this kid screaming in anguish as they die or anything. That would be a bit much for Sarah Jane Adventures. Honestly, that would be a bit much even for Doctor Who, I think. That would be more of a Torchwood thing. But yeah, it's just like, wow, I did not really expect this from Sarah Jane Adventures, as much as, like, we'll continuously say that, like, Sarah Jane, for as much as it was supposed to be aimed at a younger audience, is basically just classic Who in tone.
Really is.
And it also just doesn't talk down to kids. And this is one of those episodes. This is one of those stories that you can use as an example of that. This doesn't
this
try
is like
to
marquee example. Does not talk down.
yeah. This is like
Maybe classic Who when the Daleks aren't around. There's no screaming and dying.
Right. I guess certain sort of, I guess, yeah. But like, in any case, yeah, it's like that tone, in the sense that it feels more all ages, even though it's supposed to just be for kids. Sometimes it'll slip into more for kids territory, but this definitely feels,
It does slide back and forth a little bit, but it does generally feel like a more for all audiences, that even more so than Doctor Who at times.
But yeah, like, this is definitely one of those examples. I mean, again, I brought it up earlier. They dropped the friggin' soft N-word, which was like, whoa, wasn't expecting that. In, like, again, at the very least, I was not expecting that in Sarah Jane Adventures. So it's like, wow, they really are. I mean, pulling punches insofar as they probably wouldn't have used the hard N-word, because that would have definitely been a bit like, wait, what?
That would have been too far even for that, but yeah.
Yeah. But like, the fact that they even dropped the soft one, I was like, huh. I wouldn't have called that.
Like there's a very wide gulf between those two words.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it was this, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. I really like this one, and I would absolutely recommend it. There are issues with it where I feel like some bits go, like, I would almost argue that some bits just go by too quickly and others don't. Like, yeah, the characters seem to all, well, actually no, I'd argue it's mainly just Rani. And to a point, you could argue Sarah Jane kind of feel like they're dragging the chain a little. Whereas, Clyde's situation, it's understandable why it's taking him a while. There's like Nazis with guns. So he's got a bit of a harder task.
He's just a teenage kid, yeah. This is some gulp. Okay, here we go. Moments.
Which I guess is an additional thing. While it might almost be a criticism that the Nazis never actually try to shoot them, they're in the mid, like, they're
also trying to keep a low profile.
Like, yeah, so if you fire off a shot, it's gonna be heard. Like,
even out in the countryside, you start just rattling off a machine gun. Yeah, people are going to hear that thing for quite some ways and start going, wait, what's going on?
Yeah, and you would have to clean up afterwards and bury them somewhere.
And apparently people are close enough that they can hear church bell, and that church bell's supposed to be a warning.
Yeah, so like...
So gunfire would work just as much.
Yeah, so as much as you could almost go, why don't they shoot them? It's like, there's a lot of reasons why not.
Mm-hmm. You want to keep it inside where it's going to be muffled.
Yeah. But yeah, like, I really enjoy this. While this could have used some tweaking here and there to, like, really elevate it, I do think this is worth checking out.
All done?
Yep.
Bill.
Okay. Well, I kind of joked earlier. This is kind of like the modern version of the Keys of Marinus or the Key to Time trilogy. Uh, in those cases, there was a lot more space to work with. Even the
Mhm.
Keys of Marinus was like, actually, I think that was, well, yeah, it was
It
four
was
parts. That's still twice as long as this
actually,
episode.
I think it was 6 parts, and it was like the first 6-parter. I could be wrong.
It
But I
definitely
think...
wouldn't have been the first six-parter, but
It wouldn't have been
I
the
thought it
first
was
6 part,
shorter
but it
than it.
was definitely 6 parts for sure.
Hmm.
I'm
Okay,
pretty
so
sure it's 6
maybe
parts.
okay.
Yeah. I don't think it was a 4-part. It triple the size of this. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, it
For
was
length.
Okay. So okay, so
parts.
yeah, it was triple. Only it was triple the size of this then. Yeah. So, that definitely kind of shows in this story that things are a little small. They're a little convenient at times.
A
That
little convenient
said,
at times,
the
are a little fast paced at times. Either way.
yeah. That said, the three stories themselves are not bad. They're well suited to the characters, the character of the main characters. And I did, yeah. As I mentioned before, I almost complained about the ghosts of the future, but considering that the whole thing was being triggered by some sort of time traveling magic metal, I was like, okay, that can kind of
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, it's still explainable, but
Um,
it's easily that key.
yeah.
That key's all
Mhm.
the reason for this.
My issue then comes down to the framing device, and as Matt mentioned, that's not the whole thing with the shopkeeper is not bad in and of itself, because it can hint at future things to come.
The problem
That's
is
where
that
the
it doesn't have future things yet.
right, and the downside of this being a more or less monster of the week show, means that they kind of spread that three-parter out over like a season and a half, and that final bit never came. So we really don't know what would have happened, and we're forced to just deal with this as it is. And as it is, it kind of has a lame framing device as a result. So if that story had finished, then it might have been a really good tease. As it is, it's a tease that went nowhere.
Yeah.
So it's a mostly solid story. It is dragged down a little bit by that. But definitely the middle parts, I have pretty much no complaints about. Or if I do, they mostly come down to I wish they had spent another 5 minutes on this or that, and that's part of the time issue.
Mm-hmm.
And that is it for my final thoughts. So now we move to ratings with Matt.
I have to say, it's very close, but the dead duck framing and the a little bit of a fix in timing on some of this stuff could have saved this and brought it up a level. But as it stands, it's a very close, but it's sadly pulled down just enough to a 4.5.
4.5.
So close.
Alex.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. Like, for as good as this is, it's one of those things of like, there's just enough holding it back.
Yeah, by the skin of its teeth,
So
there's
yeah,
enough holding it back.
4.5 as well. Yeah.
Okay, so generally for me, a 4.5 means I have no major complaints, but just it's not quite good enough to hit the bump up to a 5. Since I do have one major complaint, that for me means it's a 4.0. So that does make me the negative one, but not by much, with an average of 4.33. And going to our rankings.
Definitely puts it a full point ahead of last week. Last week's story.
So that's in the range of 95 through 100. It is on par with Sarah Jane Adventures: The Last Suntaran. It is not as good as I'm trying to find another Sarah Jane Adventures. Death of the Doctor. Okay, yeah, Death of the Doctor all the way up at 4.5, which is number 67. So that just goes to show how much of a gap between 4.33 and 4.5 is.
I guess as far as like just New Who spin-offs in general, it's also not as good as Torchwood Out of Time.
Yep, Torchwood Out of Time, and Torchwood Adrift, and Torchwood the Ghost Machine are all in that range. And Lost in Time is better than Torchwood Fragments Exit Wounds, Sarah Jane Adventures Enemy of the Bane, Sarah Jane Adventures The Day of the Clown, and Sarah Jane Adventures Prisoner of the Jadoon. All right, so that wraps us up for Lost in Time. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this week's episode, if you've watched it. And since you've listened this far, don't forget to go ahead and like the video and subscribe on YouTube to get our exports every week. Or follow us on Twitch to get notified whenever we stream. Next time, we continue on with more Sarah Jane with Goodbye Sarah Jane Smith, written by Clayton Hickman and Gareth Roberts, and starring Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith, Daniel Anthony as Clyde Langer, Anjali Mohindra as Ronnie Chandra, and Thomas Knight as Luke Smith.
All right.
See you then.
See you all next weekend. Woo! I should be back in enough time to watch more Sarah Jane. Woo! Especially if I just buy dinner at work.